It appears our NATO allies are fed up with Donald Trump. Just listen to what British Prime Minister Keir Starmer told ITV News yesterday.
I'm fed up with the fact that families across the country see their bills go up and down on energy, businesses' bills go up and down on energy because of the actions of Putin or Trump across the world.
Prior to Donald Trump, it was unthinkable that the Prime Minister of America's closest ally would liken the actions of the American president to that of an invading dictator. But here we are. That comment by the British Prime Minister came a day after Donald Trump fired off this incoherent, all caps social media post, which I will not read screaming because that's what all caps means. NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big, poorly run piece of ice? The Wall Street Journal is also reporting the White House is considering a plan to punish some members of the NATO alliance that President Trump thinks were unhelpful to the U.S. and Israel during the war. That's according to administration officials. Animosity towards Donald Trump seems to be growing amongst NATO leaders. The New York Times reported on these blunt words from French President Emmanuel Macron last week. Quote, "When we're serious, we don't say every day the opposite of what we said the day before," Mr. Macron told reporters in response to a question about Mr. Trump's threat to continue the war and bomb Iran intensively. And maybe one shouldn't speak every day. Mr. Macron, speaking of Mr. Trump's verbal attacks against NATO, also said, quote, "If you create doubt every day about your commitment, you hollow it out." Serge Sherman, former New York Times Moscow bureau chief, says that Europe is done appeasing Trump. In an opinion piece for the New York Times, he writes, "It sounded like a grown-up speaking down to an obstreperous child, and that was probably what the French president intended." Mr. Macron is one of the few European leaders who have dealt with Mr. Trump almost from the first day of his first term. His transition from initial deference and feigned friendship to very public rebuke reflects the degree to which respect for the American president has fallen among European leaders and their publics. Mr. Trump's war on Iran, about which NATO allies were not consulted and in which they subsequently declined to participate, has made clear that Europeans no longer defer to Mr. Trump as the de facto leader of the free world. Joining us now, Michael McFaul, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Russia under President Obama. He is an MS Now international affairs analyst. Ambassador McFaul, as always, thank you for coming to The Last Word. Oh, I forgot. He is the author of Autocrats versus Democrats, China, Russia, America, and the New Global Disorder. Apologies, Ambassador. But
no apologies needed. Thanks.
Let me read more from Serge's reaction to Donald Trump's social media post this week. And I'm quoting here. "At least there was no new talk of leaving NATO for now. The shouty missive elicited no major pushback from foreign leaders. This was Mr. Trump being Mr. Trump. Tedious, repetitive, vulgar. He is still dangerous, and he could still unleash terror on the people of Iran should the ceasefire collapse. But his uppercase blasts, chest-thumping rants, and coarse insults are more likely now to draw a Gaelic shrug." So, Ambassador McFaul, do you agree? Are our European allies done with Donald Trump's antics?
Well, they're most certainly fed up. That's a good word that the prime minister used. They're exhausted by it. He's all over the place. One day he wants their help. The next day he says NATO can't do anything. And I think it's important to remember how he started his second term. He started his second term by threatening to invade one of the NATO allies, Denmark, to take Greenland. He started his second term by joking that one of our other allies, Canada, should become the 51st state. Then he imposed tariffs on our allies in a completely irrational way. Then he cut assistance to Ukraine to zero, so our Ukrainian allies have to help the Ukrainians themselves. And then after all that, he went on a war of choice to Iran and was then disappointed that those same people that he did all those things I just described to, I could have described many more insults and real policy implications, that they didn't come to his aid. So of course they're frustrated, but they face a dilemma because they want NATO to endure. They want NATO to exist beyond the Trump presidency. And so in one breath, you see certain leaders talking the way you just quoted them. But then when the General Secretary of NATO was here just a couple of days, Mr. Rutte, he spoke in a very different way. He spoke in a kind of appeasement way. Mr. Trump is such a great man. And I think there's a division among European leaders about how to preserve what they have before it completely falls apart.
Well, on NATO, is there a scenario where Donald Trump actually tries to withdraw the United States from NATO? I mean, my question is, can he? And if he does, what kind of long-term effect would that have?
Well, first of all, before I get to that, I want to make sure everybody understands what a catastrophic mistake that would be for American national interests, for us. Keeping the peace in Europe serves our interests. We don't want to be dragged into World War III there like we were before. It is one of our biggest trading partners. And third, it unites the free world. These are American interests. And the thing that Trump doesn't get about NATO, it's a defensive alliance. I want everybody to go read the treaty. It says an attack on one is an attack on all, not a coalition of the willing to go fight other people's wars. NATO didn't fight in Vietnam with us. NATO didn't fight with the French in Algeria. They didn't fight with the Portuguese in Angola and Mozambique. Even when the UK, the British were attacked in the Falklands War, NATO collectively didn't go fight that war. The only time they fought together was when we were attacked on September 11th. That's what it's for. Now, to your question, he could try. I mean, there's legalities and there was passed. And ironically, Senator Rubio was one of the sponsors of the legislation to say that presidents should not be allowed to withdraw. But I worry about something more subtle, moving troops out, stop with intelligence sharing, this gradual grudgery that's happening, this tit for tat stuff. And so it could be 3 years from now that maybe formally NATO will exist, but practically it won't because trust has been so broken by this president.
Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and many of his MAGA allies have put their support behind Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban as a model for reshaping Europe. Let me read something that Bloomberg reports. If polls prove correct, Sunday's election in Hungary will end his 16 years of uninterrupted power after the country grew weary of unfulfilled economic promises and the cost of living crises he has failed to halt. So what would an Orban defeat mean for Europe and for MAGA?
Well, first, the fact that we and the Vice President of the United States of America is campaigning for Viktor Orban, who is a close friend and dare I say, maybe even ally of Vladimir Putin, is just crazy. And it drives the Europeans crazy. When we do this, is blatant interference in their elections. Now, I don't think it's going to work. I think the polls are pretty clear. But just think about that for a moment. My book's called Autocrats versus Democrats. Most of it was written before President Trump's second term. Some days, the Europeans, and me included, I'm not sure which side President Trump is on in that divide in the world. But if Orban falls, if the opposition leader Magyar wins, this will be democratic renewal in Hungary. It will also lead to a more coherent European Union, and that is good for the world. And I hope President Trump will understand that it's good for America as well.
Britain putting Trump and Putin in the same sentence as threats to European family budgets is not a diplomatic slip. That is a calculated public statement from the government of America's closest ally. They chose those words. They said them on camera. In 70 years of the Atlantic alliance, that comparison has never been made publicly by a sitting British Prime Minister. Not during Vietnam, not during Iran, Contra, not during any of it. That is how far things have gone. And the world's patience with this is not infinite. There's something people in America genuinely underestimate about how the 2024 election landed internationally. 2016 was written off as a fluke. Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million. The electoral college handed to it. Countries looked at that and figured America got ambushed. Then Biden won and the world moved on. Then 2024 happened and Trump won the popular vote. Actually won it. After 4 years of watching everything, that changed the calculation permanently for a lot of countries, because you cannot argue anymore that America has been tricked. The world is now operating on the assumption that this is what America chooses. That assumption has consequences that will outlast Trump by decades. J.D. Vance campaigning for Orban is the part that should make people terrified more than anything else in this story. Orban has spent 16 years in Hungary doing actually what Trump is attempting there. Captured the courts, strangled press, gerrymandered the maps, made the elections technically free but practically meaningless. And Trump and Vance are not just tolerating this, they're studying it. They want to do the same to our country too. NATO might still exist on paper in 3 years, but trust at this scale does not come back with a new administration and a strongly worded commitment to multilateralism. The only time Article 5 was ever invoked on September 11th. They came, all of them. Now the president wants to punish those same countries for not joining a war that they were never consulted about. I need every voice of yours. My channel, please subscribe. I know that you are my elders and you know better than all of us. You have watched all of it. Please comment down below so I can hear you too. Thanks so much.